Hi, everyone. I'm Jack Shepler. I'm a board member of OutCare Health and CEO of AOK, a marketing and design agency that works with public health organizations and as a diverse supplier for corporate America. My pronouns are he, him. Thank you for joining us for OutCare's OutTalk series, a webinar series devoted to discussing diversity and intersectionality within the LGBTQ+ community. We have many people across the country tuning in today. We want this to be a safe, welcoming space for everyone, so please feel comfortable asking any questions today. All OutTalks are recorded and can be watched on our website. I'm very excited for this OutTalk, Being Out in Corporate America. Today, we will hear from inspiring people doing amazing work across the country. I'm very thankful for our moderator today, John. John, take it away.
Thanks, Jack, and it was great to have you with us. And any of you who are interested in participating in the work that OutCare Health does, please make sure and visit the website, outcarehealth.org. Amazing resources for providers all over the country, including training, access to other resources, and all of the past episodes of OutTalk. It's a pretty amazing set of resources. I am so excited to be here today. We are talking about being out in corporate America. And you know, it's amazing. It's been quite a journey for people over the years of sometimes being out wasn't a safe thing to do. And now a lot more people are choosing to be out in their workplace. And there are lots of highs and lows that goes with that experience. So we got a great panel today, and I'd like to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves to you, take a moment to share who they are, what they do, and they get a surprise bonus question that they're just hearing now. And it is a book in your lifetime that has inspired you. And it can be any book in any way, shape, or form. It could be current, it could be past, but a book that has inspired you on your journey in life. So with that said, Arya, since you and I know each other pretty well, I'm actually going to start with you today. So you are on the spot.
You told us all to unmute and stay unmuted, so we'll do that from here forward. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone in the OutTalk team for helping us bring this together and bring it to life. My name is Arya Marvazi. My pronouns are he, him. I live in Los Angeles, and I currently serve as the Senior Director of Programs at the Jews of Color Initiative. It is a nonprofit in the Jewish communal ecosystem that helps to uplift and empower the multiracial, multi-ethnic reality of Jewish life. I'm also a proud son of Iranian immigrants that came to America after the Islamic Revolution in 1979. And so I grew up in what we would call a traditional Middle Eastern home. That also meant that as a part of coming out, that came with a lot of different intricate challenges as it relates to having the dual identities of being both Iranian and American and gay and Jewish. And I'm really eager to have this conversation today about sort of how our lives have been shaped by the systems that we've worked within and how they've changed over the arc of our lifetime as well. I had like 12 seconds to think about your question, John, about the book. So in those 12 seconds, interestingly enough, the book that came to my mind is a book called Coactive Coaching that is from sort of CTI, the Coaches Training Institute, is one of the most sort of well-renowned books on coaching and the coactive model therein, which has completely transformed the way that I see even just casual relationships, let alone coaching ones with clients. So thank you again for having me.
Cool. Christina, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right, my name is Christina Padilla, and I go by the pronouns of she and they, and I am a safe person to go ahead and practice pronouns with the they pronouns and them. I also go by MX Padilla or Mix Padilla as well too, if referring to me. I don't go by Miss or Mr. I go by MX, and we'll probably explain a little bit later what that is and probably some of our questions and stuff that we have coming up. I am a mother / parent because I go by mother and parent. Sometimes I feel like a parent and sometimes I feel like a mother, you know, in regards to my little girl that's 7 years old, that's Charisma. And I have 5 beautiful nieces and nephews as well too, and a wonderful sister that I have too, that is very supporting to LGBT, not only just family, but folks all together. I travel the nation throughout the United States, as we call Turtle Island. As I'm Native American, I'm Apache and Cherokee and Aztec and Mexican. So a hope to all my Native folks that are out there and non-Native folks as well too. And so, and two-spirited. I'm two-spirited as well too. And did I forget to say what I identified as? I should say that real quick. Same gender loving is how I identify. Some people identify as lesbian, gay, and their sexuality, but I identify as same gender loving and identify as a trans, gender fluid, non-binary, two-spirited person. So I do this work in regards to helping not only just teens, but adults, not only with the coming out process, but also on a national level as far as speaking, anything to do with clinical best practices and working with LGBT folks. Also anything to do, I have some curriculum coming out. I have a book coming out as well too, that has to do with LGBT specific stuff. Also advocacy, you know, with Equality California. And also I'm one of their graduates and also going to CGI, which is the Clinton Global Initiative University as well too, having huge advocacy, not only here in California in the United States, but on a global level, helping people with mental health disorders and also SUD, those that, because we know a lot of times in our people, and these are our people, everybody, when I say, you know, that there's a lot of mental health that goes down and also a lot of substance use disorder that happens because of everything. And so I travel the nation giving education to therapists, to clinical supervisors, probation officers, drug courts, anybody that'll listen on there, especially Florida, okay? And Oklahoma, I'm calling you out, Texas, what's up? That legislation, okay, suppressing mental health and stuff. That we'll get into that a little bit later, but thank you so much for having me. It's been amazing to do this work.
And Christina, if you had a book that came to mind that has inspired you on your journey, what might that be?
You know what? One of the things that I just recently, I'd say for my journey is The Body Keeps Score. It has to do with trauma. And, you know I went second, so I had to like research like who it was by. So it's from Besley Van Der, MD. And so The Body Keeps Score, it really talks about trauma and how the body holds emotion. So it was pretty deep for me and very life-changing at the same part. So thanks, John.
You're welcome. And Gina, I'm so excited to hear about your journey. Gina, you may be muted at this moment.
Oh, sorry, I'm having some technical issues. I am Gina Novakovic. I am thrilled to be here. I have had a number of different digital marketing roles across a variety of different corporations, from Best Buy to AT&T to Amazon to Optum. I'm originally from Florida, which we've already mentioned. And I love to travel, as also has been talked about. And in fact, just yesterday, we were up in northern Minnesota and I got to walk across the Mississippi River. So I identify as a gay woman. I'm married to my wife and partner. My pronouns are she, her. Really looking forward to this conversation. And as you can probably see by my background, I'm in my office / library. So when John surprised us with what book we would like, you know, it was very easy for me to quickly go and grab. I don't know if this is the book that inspires me the most, but I think it's very timely right now, given that Florida's in the headlines. And as I said, I'm originally from Florida. This is Ruby Fruit Jungle, which I would say is probably considered like one of the classic lesbian literature books. And I pulled this out because this book would have been really good for me in the 1990s when I was a queer youth, you know, struggling to understand themselves. And what makes this book like so probably have been relevant to me is the girl actually grows up where I grew up. And I remember hearing about this book, and it was a banned book. And so because of that, where was I going to get it? Right? You know, the library, it didn't have funds to buy a book. The internet really didn't exist at that time. So I chose this book because it probably would have been really meaningful to me a long time ago, and it may be very meaningful for those in Florida today.
Thank you so much. And Gina, just to let you know, this little queer boy read Ruby Fruit Jungle as well and loved every second of it. So once again, my name is John Sovak. I'm a cis queer male. I am a therapist in Pasadena, California. I specialize in working with LGBTQIA+ adolescents and their families during the coming out process. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm excited to share that I actually have a book that just came out in April. It's called Out: A Parent's Guide to Supporting Your LGBTQIA+ Kids Through Coming Out and Beyond. And it's really, really, really wonderful to be able to share that with the world. This is work I'm incredibly passionate about. So I guess I could say right now, that's the book that most influences my life. But because I always like to play a little bit fair, a book that really inspired me is actually Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. And this is a book that I actually got exposed to at a very young age. And I had an amazing experience. I was going to school in San Diego at the time. And I finished reading the book, the last chapter, which just talks about being able to lay down and let go all the burdens of your life. And I was at the San Diego Zoo in the Japanese garden with the sound of wind chimes and bamboo blowing in the background. And it just has, this book has gone into my heart, into my soul. And every time when I hit those places in life's journey where I feel challenged, I go back to it and really look at the idea that life is a journey and we will try on many roles during the course of our lifetime. And I want to use that maybe as our jumping in point too. This idea of being in corporate America and the journeys and the pressures that come out there. And sometimes the role playing, the code switching, the ways as we as queer people step into the corporate world. And maybe that's a place we could start. What have your experiences been as a queer person in corporate America or interacting with corporate America?
So I would say a lot of the times when I would be in board meetings, say, so to speak, like I'm coming in, I'm pretty sure people sometimes might be, and not always do we stereotype, but there are a stereotype that's out there, as far as like, sometimes I feel comfortable, sometimes I don't feel comfortable. I don't know what I'm walking into in a corporate office, is, not the factor of, I'm in a suit, and my bolo tie, but I don't know what to expect. Is it a safe place for me? Even though I'm out and I do this for a living and I speak on stages, doesn't mean that I'm comfortable, you know what I mean? And that I'm feel safe in an environment, but, I feel where I've made it in my organization, a really safe place and a place for employees to be able to come out and show who they are, but I wish that it could be like that throughout the world. You know what I mean? That's my wish, by the way, not the book, but the wish, but as far as corporate America, it's a different spin. There's a lot of rainbow washing, so to speak, for people that go through, like when our prides are coming up for June, that they'll all of a sudden they'll be gay for the stay for rainbow, they'll go ahead and start buying all this stuff, but do they really support us like all year long? So for corporate America, if it's all the way through, then let's be all the way through, not only when it's convenient for monies and different stuff to come and go, but my thing about being out is very important for our youth and for them to see other people that are successful, such as Gina and is it Ari, and yourself, John, to see us in a successful mode that we made it through, whether it's mental health, whether it's drug addiction, because, we were having a hard time coming out. So we numbed our pain, or we started cutting for mental health because we needed to ease up, some stuff that came out. We need to show our faces that we are successful in corporate America today, so they know that they have role models such as all of us on this call.
Gina, Arya?
Yeah, no, that's very powerful. So I've had the pleasure of working in the Fortune 100 throughout my career. In fact, I've worked for 30% of the Fortune 10. So, very high levels, very high, companies. And, every time you meet with a client or you work with another corporate entity, you're coming out. I don't think a lot of people realize that, you walk into a room and they're immediately assessing who you are, who they're going to do business with, right? There's that natural thing. But then also, who is this person? She kind of looks maybe gay. She kind of has this different walk. Her voice is a little bit deeper, and I don't think that the average population realizes that. They think there's this like one big emotional coming out event in someone's life. Nowadays, there are like celebrations and parties, and I'm so glad that we have that, but it's not a one-time thing. Every single day, you are coming out to that client, to that colleague, to that new boss. And of course, every time you go into a restaurant or a grocery store, I think it's just an additional stress that adds to, who we are and the burdens that we have to carry that a lot of people don't understand and never even think about.
Real. I find myself sitting here just nodding along to everything the two of you have said so far. It makes me think that, and I wouldn't have unless I heard this question before we came online. Like, there's two parts of my adult career path, and there's the before the coming out career path and after, and all of it is contained within nonprofit leadership and management. But before, I was working in institutions that were, from what I knew, or from what I could assess, mostly cisgender or at minimum heteronormative in all elements of culture and identity and sort of how they functioned. And in the second half, which I'm so grateful to be a part of now, I've been working specifically in either LGBTQ nonprofits or currently one that is focused on DEI in the arenas of ethnicity and race. But I remember on the front end, for example, when I was working as a performance manager for it was a children's learning center for children that had different learning disabilities. I was still in the closet, and I was always measuring how flamboyant I may be around the parent of a child, because I was trying to guess and guesstimate how they would assess me proper caretaker for their child if they were to know that I'm gay, which is such a sick attachment, right? There's no relationship whatsoever to those two things, but I remember feeling it and feeling like you said, code switch to be the most sort of masculine version of myself anytime a parent would walk into the learning center, because I thought that would have a more positive outcome. The other thing that I recognize now, having been on the, sort of being out and being able to express as openly as I'd like, is that sometimes we get pigeonholed into the diversity character. It's like each of us have these incredible skill sets and capacities that we've cultivated over the course of a lifetime. And then I've, at minimum, I can speak for myself, I've experienced the piece of like, oh, you're a queer activist. Come and talk during June and during Pride Month. I'm like, no, I can talk to you about HR and leadership development and management. And, it's so I also see that happening as a part of sort of what corporate America does with queer people. Yeah.
And I think all of you have touched on something as well, too, is that sometimes when we as queer people are in these more hetero cis normative environments, and we are out in that environment, we suddenly represent our entire community. Mm-hmm. We are the queer person. Oh, that's what all queer people must be like. Hey, Christina, you're having a reaction to this thought. Take it away.
No, it's true. And, I get on stage and I say, I do not speak for the queer community, nor the trans community, nor for the gender fluid, because we all have different, you're meeting me, but I'm one of many. And I think, like you said, John, like a lot of times, or everybody's nodding their heads, like you walk in and it's like, you're the representation. Like, we're going to watch you and see what you got going on. And we'll go from there. And that's why I always do that caveat at the end, just because I'm telling you who I identify with and who I am doesn't mean all of us are like this. So that's why I was just laughing, and I totally was like, John, you are so just on point about, like, we walk in that room and it's either superwoman, super person, or superman. Okay. And then the non-binary person in the middle, you know what I mean? Like, which one, so, we have our capes, like we have our flags that are out there of different colors and different stuff that we do. But yeah, a lot of people get their information from one specific person, versus the whole community in an umbrella, in an umbrella,
Mm-hmm.
I'd layer on that, because I came out with the specific intention of changing hearts and minds and perspectives within my both Jewish community and the Iranian communities. Both of those communities were like, okay, so everything you do now reflects on every other queer person we know in our families or whatnot. And I was like, hold up, I didn't come and tell you my story and offer a perspective so as to become a spokesperson for queer Jewish Iranians. Like, hardly it. Rather, it's like, please notice that every one of us is having a unique set of experiences. Our family structures are different. Our home structures, our socioeconomic status, our racial and ethnic experience. And it's still hard. I've only been out for 7-8 years at this point, and it's still hard to sort of unhinge from poster boy mentality in the eyes of certain community members that are like, at least for Persian people, Middle Eastern cultures are reputation-based societies, and you don't act as an individual. Everything you do reflects on your mother, father, cousin, brother, sister, and people who you've not seen for 5 years, right? So it's interesting how that continues to happen with us as activists from different backgrounds.
And I think as people come to know us as an individual and we point out, like, I don't have all the answers for, you know, the people that I identify with, I think it helps slowly dispel stereotypes.
Mm.
I mean, for decades, people have just assumed that because I'm a lesbian, I'm like good with a hammer and nails and like, I don't know, tool things.
All right,
And
yes.
yeah, I see Christina saying like, and I'm like, okay, actually, I'm gonna whisper. In the last couple of years, I have gotten good, but for the majority of my life, I wasn't the one to go to. And it's just interesting when you're sitting around like a conference table and you're like planning an event or a give back, or years ago we were gonna do like a one of those build homes for homelessness, which is so great. And like people just turn to me like I like naturally knew how to build a house from scratch. And I'm like, not that kind of dyke here, you know?
Gina, I am dying right now because that's what it was. It's like one person even invited me over and was like, we had barbecue here because I thought you knew how to barbecue. I was like, I'll burn your house down, okay? Oh my God. You don't want me with a grill, you know? And like, I'm supposed to know how to change a tire. Well, I had to. My parents, you know, made me, you know, change a tire, but it's been a long time. That's why we got Geico and some other people to come change our tire. Like, I got a flat tire over here. So yes, I get it, Gina. Like they want all of a sudden, like I'm this masculine. I'm very feminine. I'm like a soft stud. Okay. So for me, I like they want me to go. And then like all of a sudden we go in these gender roles of like, now I got to get, if I had a girlfriend, because I'm single, but if I had a girlfriend, like I got to pull out her luggage. She can get her luggage too. We can get it together. This is a joint thing. You know what I mean? We're doing this together, you know, taking out the trash. I didn't know gender had to do with, you know, the trash can, but look, everybody, we all throw trash away. Okay. So
You know, and one thing I just saw, Brian put out a really beautiful question in the Q&A section. And for those of you who are listening with us live, you can drop questions into the Q&A. And if we have a moment, we will definitely address them. And one of the things that I think Brian pointed out that I think is really important in corporate America is how do we as queer people avoid becoming that token representation? You know, what he points out is this idea. Actually, sorry, Brian, what they point out, I am not aware of your pronouns, so I'm going to go neutral for this. What people are not always aware of is that sometimes we will be brought in to be representative, but we will not actually be allowed to have spaces to grow, to be promoted, to move up, and to be in projects that have meaning to us. That there's a siloing of that token representation. And I'd be interested to hear all of your thoughts, if maybe you've experienced that or how you see that playing out.
So just for clarification really quick, it's basically you were saying something about the poster child, but at the same time, what was the last piece? I need to, maybe we all need to.
Because you get put into that like token position, you're actually siloed and you don't have the opportunities for growth and promotion because you're put into this position to represent a certain thing.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So I think right there, I would feel very stuck. You know what I mean? That I couldn't be, like you said, like to be able to grow if somebody wanted me just to stay in that particular spot in corporate America and be like, hey, we want you to be the spokesperson and it's the LGBT piece right here. I want other people to see me as other things as well too, so I can grow. It's not just my identity and my sexual orientation. I'm Christina Padilla. I'm Christina with a K. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I do have other attributes besides loving women, you know, and my sexual orientation, you know, I love to speak on stage, you know, so I would hope that we wouldn't put people in boxes, but we do. And especially, you know, as far as in corporate America, if somebody is just like, man, you're slaying it, you're doing so good in this particular position and we're putting you up there, you know, I think, you know, also talking to somebody too, you know, like what other places that we could do for corporate growth and other places that you see yourself at, and coming to the table and saying, yeah, I know this is a wonderful position for me right now, but I see for more growth, and also training somebody else for this position as well too, as they can champion us even further as I move up in the ladder of what I got going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would layer on that. I mean, to the point that like there's no standard answer to the question. It's such a powerful one, and all of us are experiencing it in different ways based on where in the country we even are and what types of organizations we work for. But one of the answers that comes up, you said, you know, how as a queer person do you make sure that you're included in projects that affect your community and not get used for fronting? This piece about sort of virtue signaling. One thing I've begun to do is that, because it would happen in the sort of mostly white community that I used to work in as a Middle Eastern person. And then now it's like the cisgender and heteronormative community as the gay person. And what I do is when I have the mic and when I have the opportunity to speak and share from a position of, I don't know, leadership, I share sort of what my arc of learning and growth has been, such that the people in the room who I potentially have like the opportunity to network with and build future projects with can also see me far beyond what even might have been the impetus to get me in the room. So that may or may not be possible, but I say it because it's such a hard muscle to strengthen. You know, a supervisor asks you to show up and to be X person for X outcome, and we, pending our capacity for power or flexibility in that moment, can sort of tug on that a little bit and share who we are more fully, such that we are seen as a whole person. That's been one avenue for me. The other is that when I can't get it in my workplace is when I move into community projects and organizations and nonprofits where being on a board or even just being a lay leader and supporter allows me to contribute to the communities that I belong to and that, you know, that affect me and that I want to affect back positively.
And I think for a long time in corporate America, as we went through the 90s of, you know, coming out stories, and we've moved into the 2000s with corporate sponsoring gay pride parades, and we have, you know, ERGs, and we continue this journey of DE&I. You know, I think probably a number of people in corporate American have been that like token or here's the one, you know, and, you know, they get to do a lot of extra work off the side of their desk. I know I certainly have done that throughout my career, as have a number of my other, you know, queer colleagues. And I think we're coming to a point where, you know, DE&I is so important, or it should be so important in corporate America today. I would say in 2022 or 2023, sorry, I got the year wrong, 2023, 2024, it's really going to be a time for corporations, if they really want those, you know, 100% HRCs or the other really nice, you know, ratings, diversity magazine, things like that. We actually need to fund it. And, you know, the working off the side of the desk, you know, having a disproportionate of your DE&I efforts being run by queer individuals, BIPOC individuals, women, and the intersectionality of all that has to come to a stop. And that's going to, you know, take us from these little, you know, token individuals or tokenized efforts to really, truly, yeah, we're actually going to fund this. And by funded, I don't mean a pizza party, you know, actually making real change. And then we can have the pizza party because I'm Italian and who doesn't love pizza?
Well, and if you would all be okay, I'd like to maybe take us to a slightly more personal place for a moment. In my, you know, knowing you, I see you all as people who have created a lot of success in your world. And at the same time, we know when we're looking at the mental health and well-being of LGBTQIA people, sometimes one of our responses to being a marginalized community is overachievement. And it can show up, this idea of I will be a perfectionist, I will be in control, I will be successful, all as a means to keep ourselves safe in certain environments. And because we have a lot of providers with us today, I would be wondering if any of you would be okay with talking about the toll that sometimes takes on us and our well-being and health.
Yeah, I would resonate with that, John, as being an overachiever and saying, am I enough? You know what I mean? And you know, where I went to Yale, you know, I got my women's leadership program certificate. I went and did at COVID, I went to Harvard and went and got my teaching higher learning. It just resonated, everything that you just said. And then on top of it, I'm at CGI meeting all the Clintons, shaking their hands, telling Chelsea Clinton, my initiative for LGBT folks in the BIPOC population, like, when is it enough, right? But at the same time, it's like, you know, overachieving, and that we do recover, you know, in mental health, we do recover and stabilize in SUD, and we do things that, you know, are life-changing. So I think for me, you know, I want to put something very positive out there to the universe and to our youth and because they're looking at us. Our youth is looking at us. And when I say our youth, I'm talking about everybody. You know what I mean? Because they say, oh, that's not my child. Yes, it is. You know what I mean? Everybody is somebody's child, you know what I mean? And they're looking at it. So, you know, it does put a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. Like I need to execute and make sure that I do this presentation to the T, because I don't know when they'll come to another LGBT, you know, clinical best practice again. Maybe this was it. It was my one shot. So I'm trying to execute as much information as I can to the therapists, to the psychologists, to the doctors in the room, you know, as much as I can. So yeah, there is an added stress. And then also the stress is, you know, the judgment. I don't know who's inside of my, you know, of my presentations. You know, I went to Florida recently, you know what I'm saying? And they had security for me. You know, they had 2 security people in the behavioral health. I was just like, that just puts me a whole different tone, you know, before I get on stage in front of 1,000 people. I'm like, well, that hits a little bit different. Do I need a bulletproof vest or what? So I think trying to educate and execute, it puts a lot of stress, and also a lot of stress also to put out there, like say even in Florida and some different states that are out there that have the trans panic defense. Once I say I'm trans, they could kill me. Basically, shoot me in the head. Sorry, I know it's graphic, but it's just real talk, and get only 3 years. This is real stuff in some states in the United States that are happening right now. So the pressure to be getting that information out there and the stress that comes along with it is very high, I would say. And so you said to share something personal. I hope that was super personal. So I was like, whew.
You know, I think, you know, to build on that, you know, the overachieving may also go hand in hand with being in corporate America, right? You know, I worked in Amazon. Everybody there was a high achiever. But then you add on, I'm a woman, I'm gay, I feel like I need to be even more, you know, high achieving, because the reason I want to be in the room is for my accomplishments, not because I'm the gay one or the woman and they need a, you know, different perspective. I think there's also the imposter syndrome. Like, you know, do I really know this? You know, and I like how Christina talked about, you know, going off to get, you know, all these degrees, because, you know, I've done the same. You know, in 2019, my company paid for me to, even though I'm in digital marketing, go off and become a data scientist. And because of that knowledge, my team was able to build a COVID tracking and prediction model, which was our leading indicator. We almost got a patent for it. I give that example because literally right now, because I want to be the overachiever, I'm taking an MIT class, which is basically kind of the same thing I just did in 2019, but a little bit more, just so that I am the overachiever, possibly dealing with some of that imposter syndrome, to give myself more validation. I'm in the room, not just because I've done all these LGBTQ things that you've heard about me and reasons I've had these conversations with you senior leaders, but look, I'm doing this other stuff in my core day job. Oh, and now let's throw the MIT label on it.
Yeah, I'm thinking, so I studied psychology in undergrad and then got my master's degree in organizational behavior. And it was never the intention to be a nonprofit leader and a manager. It sort of happened as a matter of passion projects that became my career. And the greatest blessing and curse of having your passion aligned with your career is that it is hard to emotionally detach from the sense that your productivity is positively or negatively impacting people's lives, but whether it's up or down. And about a year and a half, well, first like 4.5 years ago, I remember turning to a friend and saying, and it was a couple of years into my LGBT activism, and it was incredible and fulfilling and helping so many people, and also like such an enormous toll and burden to bear on behalf of a community you love so much. The idea that if you get a phone call at 2:30 in the morning and somebody needs your support, how do you say, I love you, I also need life balance? It's like you want to show up and be that person. And I remember naming to a friend that I feel like I'm going to have an emotional or physical or a mental breakdown, help me. And reaching out to that friend was the way in which I found out about breath work and about, like, I've always known about meditation. It was breath work that I think in certain ways saved me in that moment. And that was sort of one brushing up against sort of things having to come to a grinding halt. The other time that happened, that I think it's relevant for us to hear, because capitalism breeds this endless pursuit of wealth and accumulating wealth and succeeding and achievements over and over, is like, I got a great job after 5 years of working like in a non-LGBT nonprofit as the CEO of another small nonprofit. there was a wool over my eyes. Honestly, it was not a succeeding nonprofit. It was pretty much crumbling financially. And I chose to quit that job because I thought I'm going to go and travel the world and finally take the break that I never got to. This is just a couple of years ago. So 13 years into my adult career. When I am like floating through Italy and eating pasta and all these great things, and my five senses are very much satiated, my soul was devastated. I was so upset that I was unproductive. I was so down and depressed that like I don't have a productive output right now. And I think so much as there are mental health providers listening to us, you know, we need to be reminded that your productivity has no correlation to your internal value as a human being. And America breeds the exact opposite sentiment in us, mentally, emotionally, and intellectually. So that feels relevant.
Well said. Well said.
And I think it's important for providers to be aware too, that these types of stresses, anxieties, overwhelm, overwork that we're looking at are also going to have not just an emotional toll, but also a physical toll. And it's important to understand that when you're working with LGBTQ clients, that this might be part of the fabric of understanding who they are and how they're walking through the world. You know, I'm taking us just a little bit deeper still. In my time in corporate America, it was a really fascinating journey. I worked for a large corporation organized by a mouse. And in that process, I had come through this job. I had first been working as an entertainer for them. And then I got an opportunity to move into management. And I was at a point in my life and career where I thought that'd be really exciting. So I moved over there. Now, when I'm out in the park and I'm singing and dancing, I can be as gay as I want. But when I moved over to the management side, there was this subtle message, and sometimes not so subtle message, is, can you not be quite as gay? And it was both a covert and an overt message that I started hearing. And it was incredibly painful to experience that, because my work so far with that company had been like, I can be whoever I want to be. But when I moved into this suit and tie oriented side of the company, it was incredibly painful to hear these messages of, can you tone your gayness down?
Mm-hmm.
I have a heartbreaking example of that, which ended up well, not to make things fairy tales and make them positive. But as I was doing the LGBT activism within the Persian community a few years ago, there was a night that I threw a fundraiser. It was called the Persian Pride Variety Show. It was meant to be a celebration of queer Iranian and Persian identity. And so we had a Persian drag queen and a non-binary non-binary and male belly dancer.
Okay.
And a comedian of this and that. And I mean, and we raised over $15,000 and it was amazing. But in the weeks leading up to that evening, the number of phone calls, anonymous messages and emails that I got from people saying, one, why are you doing this? You are basically like bringing shame to the larger community. Two, if you want queer equality, this isn't the way. This is way too in people's faces and way too flamboyant and way too out of the norm. And everyone's sort of like, you're doing a great job by coming out on Facebook, which is how I first came out, and I kind of look like this. And so they could accept that. But a transgender drag queen and a male belly dancer, and there was the moment where, as you mentioned, John, it was like, oh no, we're comfortable if it fits into our schema of the binary. The moment you step out of our schemas, like, it's far too much. And I just want to name that there were these individuals who, by virtue of our pushing and sort of naming, we're going to do us, you can choose to purchase a ticket or not, show up or not. Nobody's, you don't have handcuffs to be brought into the room. We got a number of apologies and a number of sort of like, we just didn't think that our community was ready for that. Now, I don't mean to suggest, by the way, that anyone else is as safe to go out and do that. No, nobody can ever make a recommendation as to how safe one might be to put your flamboyance out there and see how people receive it. But the example I give is just to name that we also experienced it. And I think people recognize, like, we're a little bit, we have the room for growth. It's not them that are being their most authentic selves and who we see joyously and appreciate, right? That's what comes to mind.
One of the things I was going to say is that, have you ever, and this still happens to right now, it's like, oh, well, I have a child, or I have a person, or my friend is gay, or they're trans. And I'm like, they'll start lowering their voice. Like, I was like, well, where are we at right now? Okay, because it's okay. You're all right to say this, okay? But it's been my experience that even in corporate America, if you say that out loud, like, or if somebody says they're gay, it's like, oh my God, someone just dropped a bombshell, right? Like, oh, wait a minute, you know what I mean? Unless you're in like another area that is like, we're already, hey, we're like fabulous already, you know, we're moving and grooving. So I think even like what you were talking about, for me, it's like, yeah, you're like toning things down, or we're not sure they're ready for that yet, Christina, or we're not sure if they're going to take you, you know, seriously, or we'll get to that, or we're not sure we should say that. You know, I'm not necessarily saying the company I work for now, but I'm talking about in the past, you know, but there have been times that were like, I was in a board meeting one time, right? And I had walked into the board, and I guess this person must either be blind, and not that I want to be stereotyped or something, but I was giving a board report, and one of the members in the part, because I had said, hey, we should do some LGBT stuff, right? Just talking, you know, and I'm like brand new into the business, into this particular company. And then the person goes and says, well, how do we know we even want those people to be part of us? And I almost about died, because I straight to my face, not that he knew. Well, I was like, oh my God, somebody saved me. You know what I mean? I was just like, and everybody's just like, it's like a mic drop in not the best way. And then afterwards, you know, all hell broke loose you know, not during the board meeting, but afterwards, like, hey, you know what, you know, but it was, like I said, it was like 10, 11, 12 years ago. So it was a long time, but it was more like this, shh, or we're not sure, or let's censor it, versus like, hey, just be yourself. You want to go run around in a tutu? If I wanted to run around in a tutu, people would still look at me crazy too. Like, what you doing? Just because I'm masculine presented. What, I can't have a tutu? I'm gender fluid. I'm a woman too. So what's up? I'll go run around with the gay men. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not, you know.
We want you running around with us.
Yeah.
Please
I want to
come
run
in.
around with you all, okay? With charisma in her tutu.
You know, when I joined my last company, I did so remotely, and it was really before we had this on-camera, you know, focus, or I've always had an on-camera focus, they didn't. And so to kind of identify those movies, like moments like Christina said about those people, I lived kind of for, you know, a couple months, never seeing everybody, just on conference calls, and you know, they didn't see me either, and got to know people and heard them reveal themselves to me in probably ways they wouldn't if I've just, you know, walked into the office and said, hey, I'm Gina, or they spotted me like 20 feet away and knew that I had a wife. So, you know, those are moments when you get to kind of like outline people and put that in the back of your mind as you're moving through corporate America. And I want to talk about something that John said about, you know, being in a media company and having to like change how you act. I almost didn't enter corporate America because 20 or 25 years ago, I was thinking of working for a different, very large media company. And I had the opportunity to meet their very well-known CEO. And I was being guided by, you know, someone, and they're like, well, you have to dress like a girl, because this was in the South. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean in this area? And that's the last time I ever put on a skirt and like girly shoes. And it just felt so inauthentic. And, you know, I did it, I did what I needed to do. And I was like, if this is what it means to work in corporate America, I'll go a different route. And fortunately, you know, life took me in different directions, and I eventually found my way into corporate America. But, you know, that was a very scary situation of like, this is potentially going to limit my economics, right? I can rise the ladder in corporate America, get to really nice salaries, or do I just be authentic to myself and work at a nonprofit or something? And so I'm glad I eventually found a different path, but it was pretty dark and scary at that time.
You know, and I think going back with that idea of like when we're first entering into the business world, Vicky brings up a really powerful question. You know, all of us on the panel today have put in a lot of time and energy to be where we are in the world. But coming into the workforce, entering it as an LGBTQIA plus person, what are your thoughts, advice, things that you might share to help those people who are now coming into the workforce and what their approach to being out or not would be?
I'll go ahead and take it since I see everybody thinking about it, right? All right, so the first thing is I mean, thinking about being out, right? So sometimes it's nobody's business. You know, you want to keep that to yourself in regards to, like, you know, it's something very personal, you know, and you're confident of who you are, and that's okay. We can do that, you know, but we also, I'm talking to everybody on this call today, those that do want to be out and they can't get it out basically for the most part, but they want to be out in their jobs. They want to be out there and stop taking their, you know, oh, my best friend or my roommate to the Christmas party or show up by myself with nobody. You know what I mean? There's that piece too. You know what I mean? Like, hey, but as far as the coming out process, like for me, I'm shooting rainbows and ponies, but it took me a long time to get where I'm at. So if you're thinking, I'm just going to go tomorrow and say you work at Verizon or you work for a county or whatever, and just say, hey, here I am, this is what's going on. You know, there's a way to ease into it where it's comfortable for you. You know what I mean? And kind of testing the situation out when you're going into a particular place, and, you know, the talk around in the office and what they're saying, and, you know, maybe it's not safe for us, you know, to go ahead and disclose that at that time. And maybe you can bring awareness from a consultant outside to come in and then, you know, have some of those things happen in corporate America to then bring your sexuality, if you want, if it was important for you, for them to know that, because that's important to you, you know, and your gender identity, especially for our trans folks that are out there with gender. A lot of times it gets missed, like over, people don't go ahead and do respect the pronouns or the names. So that part's important as far as like when you're coming out. I tell everybody like this, my clients, go to Starbucks, and if you have a name that you want that really stands out and a dead name that you want to get rid of because that's just not you anymore, right? It's just go ahead and go to multiple different Starbucks and get your name, you know, so you can hear it, not just practice it with other people, but how does it sound? Like, how does that sound? You know, so I don't want to take up all the time, even though I did talk a lot, but for our trans folks out there too as well, you know, we see you, we hear you, gender fluid, non-binary, you know, all the different sexualities, we see you and hear you, and we love you. And I'll give somebody else a chance to chime in.
You know, I completely agree with what Christina is saying is, you know, it's your choice, you know, how you want to reveal or what you want to share with your future colleagues. A couple tactical things that I would recommend. While it's not perfect, I would look at the HRC's ranking. I think there is definitely some pinkwashing there, but at least it's one thing that's quantified. I think 2, you can look at Glassdoor reviews. I mean, there is just so much out there today, or other internet searches. And then 3, as you're evaluating different companies, and this is something that I do as well, go on LinkedIn and find their ERG leader and have that candid conversation. If they'll even talk to you, which typically they will. So that way you're getting, you know, that kind of like inside scoop as you're making that determination if that's the place you want to go.
Yeah, that I completely would layer on everything Gina and Christina said, and I'd add to it. Companies have missions, visions, values, or ethics that they're supposed to be working from. Now we know that that's sometimes true or not, you know, how aligned they are with those values or ethics is one piece. The other is when we get into the conversations about benefits, I find that to be a very informative moment around when they talk about healthcare, when they talk about whether it's parental leave or maternal leave, or how they even identify the category of parenting, how they, whether or not they have pronouns in their signatures. There are so many signals of organizations and systems that are attempting at minimum, whether that be to virtue signal or to authentically, you know, offer a better experience for queer people entering the workforce. That those are things to look for. And the last thing I'd say is, in particular, when we are looking for new jobs, to not forget that we are the prize, we are the gift. It's true that we are applying for a position to work somewhere, but they need us. And it is very much okay to suggest, in particular when an interview is going well and you do seek potentially an employment opportunity somewhere, could I set up an informational interview with 1 or 2 of your colleagues for some questions that I have about the experience of working there? And then you get to really sort of just, you know, you'll be measured about what you choose to ask a colleague at an institution you want to work at, but don't feel like it's strictly us in the interview seat. We get to ask future employers the things that we need to know about them to make decisions about whether or not we want to support their business.
And I think one thing that I would add to this too is for employers who may be joining us or listening to this podcast is to also be aware you've just heard incredible additional layers of work that LGBTQ people are going through to see if they will be part of your organization. And that, I think, is a burden on you to maybe lower those levels of fear and anxiety that we may be coming with, to be willing to create policies and procedures that will address some of those questions right off the bat, rather than putting the burden on us to have to do all of this research to simply see if we might be safe in your company.
Absolutely.
And we're getting close to time for today. So I want to bring us all into it's a question we use quite often in these casts. And I want to bring it to you. What do you see a hopeful vision of the future for LGBTQ people and their relationship with corporate America?
I would love to see an allyship. My hopes is that allyship, we can agree to disagree on many forms and different things, but we're talking about humans, you know what I mean? So an allyship with the corporate America and safe places that we don't just say safe place, but it's a safer place for us all to be able to navigate through, whatever, well, like we say, HR forms, or if we need time off for our partner, or, maybe we don't feel comfortable yet telling somebody our gender, or they've only got female, male, where's the gender fluid? Because that's what I'd be checking and stuff like that. So having these corporate America, the people in the corporate world, getting more trainings and getting more information, like 2 to 3 times a year, and not just like, oh, we had to do this LGBT training. Okay, we're done. Well, also not only just on sexual orientation, but also on gender, because your staff is transitioning with or without you, at home or in the corporate world. They're being able to come in and feel safe to tell you their name, even though it's not their government name on there, or their pronouns, and being respected by them. So hopefully, to make it easier, like John said, where you can go ahead and get this education, so it won't be such a burden on your employers or employees, to have to be the one that's the person that's holding the torch, the rainbow torch, and shooting rainbows and ponies out of their wrists, making it a little bit easier for us to go ahead and our mental health not to be so stressed out, to be like, how am I going to be judged? Am I going to be all right here? I'm not sure. Like, there's a lot of privilege where other people don't have to think about all that. We think about that all the day, even going to the bathroom. So that piece right there, and I'll pass the mic.
Yeah, I would like to see more role models who've had an experience similar to mine and those of other queer individuals. I could probably count the amount of queer executives that I have been led by at a very senior level in an organization on one hand. We need to get to the board level. We need to get to the EVP place. We need to get to the CEO place. And that's something that I hope to see over the next couple years. And I think that will have a real cascading effect throughout the organization.
I'll start low level and just go higher with a dream. Low level, one thing I've practiced on this call that I've been practicing for some time now is, as a cisgender man on a phone call with individuals who are not cisgender men, not speaking first. And that is such a small shift that people can try and consider in terms of how they lead systems, because cisgender men, typically those of a Caucasian background, tend to take up so much space that it is tough for people to even just get their voices out. So that's one thing. My dream is, and one of my life commitments is, to help individuals recognize that the human romantic, sexual, and biological spectrum is a spectrum, and we are on that spectrum over the arc of our lifetimes. So much as employers and colleagues, we can recognize everyone around me is constantly on a spectrum. We currently have checkboxes for gender, and we have checkboxes for orientation, and we have checkboxes for things as though these are static moments in time that stay permanent because you've now checked the box. And that's just not the way the human experience functions. And psychology affirms this, and psychiatry affirms this. So as employers, let's think about how do we expand our systems to better embrace the spectrum of human identity and expression.
Wow.
Well
Thank you all
said.
so much. And I want to grab on something that all of you had said at one point, and Christina had just mentioned it, not just allyship, but authentic, ongoing, long-term allyship. It's not just a one and done thing, but it is a continual movement of learning and growing and being part of our community. So I want to thank you all so much for joining us today. It's been an honor hearing from your wisdom and your experience. For those of you who are listening, we are coming up to Pride Month. We are just about a week or two away. So please feel free to reach out to OutCare Health, look through our website for resources to support you in that process. And maybe as part of your Pride Month commitment, whether you're a corporation or individual, consider making a donation to OutCare Health to support the work that we're doing. And I'm really excited. Next month's episode is going to be really cool. We're going to be opening up a really powerful discussion on the impact that all of these anti-LGBTQ and gender diverse and trans healthcare laws are having on families, patients, providers, and individuals. It's called Stop the Bans, the Reality of Trans Healthcare. And we're going to be joined by some community leaders in Tennessee, Indiana, and Kansas. So people who are really right in the middle of it. So I'd like to thank you all for joining us today and hope you can join us next month for our next episode. Take care, y'all.
Take good care.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Much.